অপ্রচলিতর পক্ষ থেকে আপনাদের সকলকে স্বাগত জানাই। আজকে আমাদের সাথে রয়েছেন ইনস্টিটিউট ফর হিউম্যান ডেভেলপমেন্টের প্রফেসর দেবনাথন। তিনি দীর্ঘদিন ধরে জাতপাত বিরোধী আন্দোলন, লিঙ্গ সাম্যের প্রশ্নের আন্দোলন ইত্যাদি বিষয় নিয়ে এবং সেই প্রশ্নগুলো নিয়ে একাডেমিক হিসেবে লেখালেখি করেছেন। তার এই নিয়ে বিস্তর পড়াশোনা রয়েছে এবং একই সঙ্গে তিনি ঝাড়খণ্ড, বাংলা সহ ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন আন্দোলনের সাথেও একসময় যুক্ত ছিলেন। তার কাছে আমরা মূলত আজকে আসছি জাতপাত, লিঙ্গ এবং অসাম্যের বিভিন্ন যে সামাজিক বিষয় রয়েছে সেটাকে উনি অর্থনীতির সাথে কিভাবে যুক্ত করছেন, কিভাবে তিনি ভাবছেন সেই বিষয় নিয়ে আলোচনায়। As we learned from your writings and speech that knowledge is a very important criteria for economic capability. What you find in the caste system or social division of labor, how knowledge plays a role as a criteria for development, and also how it functions in today's society, how the monopolization of knowledge also functions.
Okay. Yeah, I have been looking at the role of knowledge in economic and social differentiation. Now, knowledge is of different types of jobs or tasks, as we say. So there is a knowledge of childcare, there is a knowledge of cooking, there is a knowledge of production in a factory, there is a knowledge as being a teacher. All of these are different kinds of knowledge. But society values these knowledge in different ways. There is nothing inherent in knowledge that makes it that some knowledge is of low value and other knowledge is of high value. For instance, a society requires all kinds of tasks to be done. It requires the task of cleaning, it requires the task of getting water, of scavenging, it requires the tasks of cooking, of childcare, of production or of agriculture. So all of these tasks are required for a society to function, and they tend to be divided among different people, sometimes by class, sometimes as in India in the ancient or from a long time ago in the Hindu system by caste. So, and then this is valued differently. So it's not the knowledge itself that is of higher or lower value, but we give it a higher or lower value. We say that, or the Hindu system said that the knowledge of the priest is of the highest value. Manu said that the Brahman comes from the head and the Shudra from the feet. So that means that knowledge which comes from the head is high value, that which comes from the feet is low value. So it is the society that ascribed a particular value to knowledge, and that becomes the basis of economic differentiation. So between castes, there are the caste in the hierarchy depends on how its knowledge is valued. So the knowledge of the Dalit, who is even the outcast, is not even considered in the caste valuation in Manu. But the knowledge of the Shudra is the lowest, that of the Vaishya comes a little higher, the Kshatriya higher than that, and of the Brahmin the highest. So that is how knowledge which is confined to a particular group, which becomes a caste, therefore becomes a basis for hierarchy. And you can't acquire the knowledge of another caste. I mean, in Manu it is very clear, you cannot listen to the Sanskrit, you can't try to learn Sanskrit. But not only Shudras, even women were not allowed to learn Sanskrit. So the point is that knowledge divides both by caste and by gender. In that social knowledge, there is a further differentiation within the caste because there are men and women in each caste. So in some castes, in most castes, the women were not allowed to learn the key knowledge of that caste. For instance, for a weaver caste, the women could not weave. They were banned from weaving. The weaving was untouchable. If a woman touched it, it had to be purified. In the farmer caste, the women could not touch the plough. If they touched the plough, they would be, punished for that, or the purification had to be carried out. So there is a further level of differentiation, that the knowledge of the caste is also not allowed for women of that caste. And that becomes a double level of differentiation between social division of labor between castes, and then within the family the further division of labor between genders, both based on a knowledge basis. Now, as I said, this is a matter of a division of labor. But is this division of labor something natural? Because you have certain capabilities, I have other capabilities, or is it something derived from our division of labor? So, even Adam Smith was very clear that it is not capabilities that create the division of labor, it is the division of labor that creates capabilities. So if I am to be a farmer, I will learn the tasks of being a farmer. And if you are to be a wife, you will learn the tasks of being a wife. I'll give you a personal example, which I always use, because when our daughter was young, I had a discussion with my wife that, look, you know more about childcare, so why don't you do that main work and I will do some other works. So she said, I was not born with that knowledge of childcare. I learned it. If I learned it, you can also learn it. So, well, I did learn it. If you ask my daughter, she'll say I learned it. But that's the point, that knowledge is something, and capabilities are something we develop by learning that task. It is not something given to anybody. We are born with no capabilities other than to survive. Then we learn. We learn to be a farmer, we learn to be a potter, we learn to be a wife, we learn to be a husband. So all of these capabilities are learned, and therefore knowledge becomes a basis for inequality by first not allowing certain knowledge to certain people and allowing it to others. So that became the basis of caste. Now it was there in other societies also. I mean, even Europe, etc., had, farmers learned farming, and the soldiers learned to be soldiers. But in India it became stronger because of the caste system, where you could not move from one class to another class, from one caste to another caste. It was certainly not allowed. There also there was no social mobility, but here by birth you were ascribed to a certain caste, and the caste was perpetuated through the, as it is called, by marriage within the caste. By marriage within the caste. So that caste endogamy was very important to the marriage system, and the creation of patriarchy also. So in this way there is a division of labor, and follow along with that a division based with a division of knowledge and the evaluation as being high knowledge or low knowledge.
When you are saying about the gender roles, I have a question. There is a debate. Some feminists link it with the reproduction as a step which has decreased the power of women in the ancient society. Some relate it with the production relation. What do you think about how it has evolved?
Well, on a very broad level, I would only say that, again, this is also a form of relationship that developed. For instance, taking the question of childcare, childbirth is something specific to a woman. At least so far our technology does not allow us to have birth without a mother. So that is something that is required. But child care does not have to be done only by the woman. Therefore, in the current society, in the capitalist system, for instance, a couple of years ago, a Harvard feminist economist, Golden, got a Nobel Prize for her work on what she called the motherhood penalty. Where many women, because of motherhood, they have to either drop out of a job, or they have to try to have a flexible job so that they can combine it with caring for the children. But I don't think it's because motherhood suggests that this is a matter of a natural system. Mothering is a natural system, but being the caregiver, being the primary caregiver, is not a natural system. You can have a mother who will go back to work, provided there is either a state-sponsored or a system of childcare, or the husband shares the childcare. I mean, it is possible in that manner. So it is not the right term. But therefore, it is the manner in which care is distributed in a patriarchal society that makes for the penalty. It's not just simple motherhood. So it's not simply the matter of birthing that leads to the problem of the penalty because you cannot take up. For instance, when I was looking at it in terms of the question of care and the labor, we were looking at it, we wrote a paper, my Govind Kelkar, my daughter Pallavi and myself, we wrote a paper on gender and caste inequality, which is there in the Journal of Technology and Development. And there when we saw this, there was an account of a Brahmin woman and how she spends her day. And all her day is spent in care, cooking, baby, the husband, etc. So she has no time to acquire the knowledge other than that which she is doing. She cannot learn the scriptures because she doesn't have the time. The man, all he does is to learn the scriptures, teach his students, go and meet others and do that. So he has all the time.
Yes.
Now when you look at it, so the woman cannot develop as a sage, as a wise woman, because she has to spend all her time in care. The man, however, can. Now when you go to Tamil Nadu and you go to the southern, the Dravidian culture in that sense, over there you find that there was the sage, the Tamil sage, who learnt everything, but his sister could not. So what she did was to give up being a woman. She denounced being a woman. So she went in a way directly from pre-puberty to post-menopause and did not go through that entire process of being a woman. So she had to give up being a woman in order to be a sage.
Yes.
So as a woman you could not become a sage. So that is the point, that that there is a penalty, not because you're a woman, but because of the social responsibilities put, or the gender-based responsibilities put upon a woman.
How you link the question of meritocracy with the caste system, or with this kind of differentiation, which leads to a Brahmanical structure, Brahmanical thinking, where a person who has merit, and mostly from the upper caste, are treated in some other way.
Meritocracy works. Initially, meritocracy was simply divided, based on caste. Okay, the Brahmins had merit, nobody else had merit, or equal merit. But now we have examinations and we have professions, and you can go to IITs and you can go to the other kind of medical institutes, etc. But what has happened is that the upper caste has turned caste privilege into a merit.
Yes.
Turned it into being the ability to do well in examinations and to get all those marks and to be able to be successful. So caste privilege has become a matter of merit, while those who are from the underprivileged caste do not manage to transform that in a way what we call social capital. They don't have that to be able to make it into that merit. And when they do get in, as we know from the large number of suicides and other problems that there have been in these institutions of higher education, that there have been problems of them even to fit in, because they are treated, oh, you are you're a reserved candidate, you didn't come on your own merit, you are a sarkari candidate, they have given you, as though they don't have any merit. So there is a double problem. One is of performance and the other is of being looked down upon, that they never become part of that system. So it's very difficult for them to manage in that. So caste privilege has been turned into merit. That's what has happened in the current system.
Another thing which is discussed a lot among the activists, that is what is the relation between caste and class, and how the caste system is also linked to the economy. Because many say now, still now, many say that caste is only a superstructural phenomenon. How you see it, linking the caste system with the economy, and what is about the caste class relation?
Well, first of all, there is still the castes, which are professions that are based on caste. I mean, farmers are farmers. They are basically what used to be the Shudras. They are the middle caste. Okay, now we call them OBC. Others are not farmers. Now, some Dalits can become farmers. They do acquire land. Sometimes that does happen, but they still remain different from them. They don't have the whole network which is required in your system. So there's a strong link. Secondly, when you move into the modern working class, in a sense, then also there's a differentiation. For instance, there's a differentiation which we saw in the trade unions even a long time ago between, say, the permanent workers who were mainly from the upper caste and the contract labor who were from the lower caste. This has remained strong, except in the public sector units. Yes, you had reservation, so you had some amount of SC, ST being able to get those jobs. But for the rest, it is the lower caste who dominate in the contract labor. Yes. It is the lower caste who dominate, and women who dominate in the informal sector. So it is not equal to, but there's a correspondence between the two. The upper caste dominate in the professions, whether it is the legal profession or the medical profession, or even as judges in the various courts. So they dominate over there. In the middle level you have others, and then at the bottom you have them. So it's not the same as caste, but it corresponds to the old caste division.
You are from Maharashtra. About your experiences in the 70s, you have a lot of experience in Prayom also. You have gone through the times when there was radical Dalit movement there, and also about the Dalit Panther movement which was going on in Maharashtra mostly in that time in 70s. I also want to know, in the Dalit Panther movement and Dalit Panther manifesto, they have defined Dalits in a somewhat radical way, in a new way. But later on it cannot persistently create that impact in later years. So what do you think about that? What is the reason for that?
I can't say, because most movements of this type do have a certain limitation, that they come up and then something else comes up and a newer movement develops. So though the Dalit Panther movement was very important in terms of bringing the Dalit issue and even coining the term Dalit, because that didn't really exist, that we are the downtrodden, unlike this idea that, oh, everybody is the same and we are all equal, which is not correct. But they were very clear that it was not so. So it was a very important movement because it changed, it challenged the caste structure and brought forward a large number of movements related to it. The student movement was affected by it. We were linked with it in many ways, because as a student movement, or as Prayom, we also worked in the slums in Bombay, what is now Dharavi and Matunga labor camp. Those were areas where we worked. And of course, we knew these Dalit leaders and we had links with them, and we did work with them in these things. There was some initial resistance in terms of, oh, they should not be as a caste issue. Should be in a way class, but there was much, it didn't really, that resistance was not very strong, and it was accepted that we needed to work with them and be part of this. So these movements have come up and they have had their role in history.
Dalit movement of the 70s, we find mostly the land question was linked and it was brought as a demand in those days. But in later phases, it was not so prominent, the land question. What do you think about it?
Well, it became more moving towards jobs and towards reservation and towards the modern economy, in that sense, to the new economy of the urban economy. So the Dalit movement had a very strong urban center. That is why, even though the land question was raised, it was not really a big issue in that way. But anyway, the land question has not been taken up very much, except in other areas that were taking up. So that is a weakness, that the land question did not remain important in the focus of the Dalit movement.
the Brahminism has taken different forms in different phases we see. Although it is a structure which is thousands of years back from that period, it is at the heart of our state structure, what we find from our studies or something. But in the colonial phase, it has taken some shape. In today's India, what we find, it has taken a very crude shape where political Hindutva is dominating, and a sense of unitarian centralist model is taking place in every aspect, in language, in the lifestyle, in the question of food, in question of religion, everything. So what do you think about today's Brahminism? What feature you are seeing?
Well, it has been redefined as first of all as a meritocracy, with no place in that for others. So that way it gets. But there is in this way there is what we would call a long shadow of history. I mean, people talk about the civilizational history of India as being a Hindu civilizational history, and so that has its effect. I mean, the Hindu civilizational history, caste was very much part of it. So if we have taught something to the world, it is caste. And that is as it has been analyzed in America, caste is similar to race in the sense that you are born into it and you cannot marry out of it, or you're not supposed to. And like in America, people used to be killed for interracial marriages. In India, people are still killed. Every day we hear stories, reports about how a father killed the daughter or the son-in-law or somebody because of intercaste marriage. So yes, it is there. It casts a very long shadow on our present condition, and it is not something that we will get over very easily without a huge change in all of this.
Today we find some new steps are being taken, like caste census, which was brought in front as a demand by the opposition as well. But now the political party in power also, they are also recognizing it and want to implement it, caste census. What do you think of it?
I think we need a caste census. We need a caste census because there's a lot of hidden in the name of general caste, and not having, as though the only the jobs that are reserved are for the Dalit or for the Adivasi. The rest of the jobs are to be monopolized by that 15 or 20%, and including in the professions, including in the lawyers or in the judiciary or in politics also. Of course, because of the movements from below, so there have all these parties have been forced to give some scope for that. But we need to be able to see the structure of how caste is still embedded in the economy, and I think for that we need a caste census. I am in support of that. I know I've read some people who are not in support of it, but I think it's necessary to be able to reveal the domination of the upper caste. We have not yet reached. We can stop the caste census when castes have disappeared, but they have not disappeared. They're very far from that, and so we do need to have an idea of who is dominating what section of the new classes that are being formed.
The last question is very much different from this topic. It is mainly I have heard from your speech that you have worked, and also from your studies, that you have worked extensively on economics and about world order also. So what we find in today's world, everyone knows that AI or artificial intelligence, cloud computing, this quantum computing, this is taking the shape in as a great leap in technology. So previous few years back, we find in 2019-20, we find a particular agenda going on, Great Reset it was called, and New World Order. A person, World Economic Forum chief Klaus Schwab, he has extensively written about it, that they want to reset the world in a way where many of the people will not have any work, which is matching with what you said today also. There is some factories where dark factories which are called, where there is no people working. So they are saying the world will be set in such a manner, many of the people will be out of work, they will own nothing, and but they will be happy, they will be given a basic income, UBI, universal basic income schemes. So this agenda was put forward in the pandemic times, but now what you feel, this is in the run, or that has gone in back foot, or will be established later on? What do you find?
Well, I don't think I can give a full answer to this because I'm still thinking about this. So maybe in a few months I'll have a better way of looking at it. But there is one thing that's clear, that as Marx put it, okay, there is a contradiction between when do things change, when do the relations of production change, when the forces of production cannot anymore be developed under the old relations of production. So the steam factory, the factory of mass production, could not take place under the feudal system, and it required, it needed, it brought about, and it led to, not directly but through humans, of course, through people who made those new technologies and the new forms of organization and new relations of production. So though I cannot give any answer in this manner, but I can only say that yes, AI and robotization will change many things. We don't know how they'll happen, but we need to think about it. We need to think what will happen when the workers in many areas are not needed, or as the trade unionist told Henry Ford, who told them, look, we won't need you workers because we'll have robots. So the unionist asked him, well, who will buy your cars? So we will have to change the system in which income is earned, in which profits are accumulated, and which is what capitalism is. So I have no doubt some change will come. How it will come, we have to think about it. And what kind of change do we want? We also have to think about that, so that we are not just in the hands of a few people who will decide. Otherwise we're going to have the trillionaires who will decide everything. No, we'll have to decide from another way, and we have to think about what kind of new society do we want with the now possibilities that are now opening up.
ওনার কাছ থেকে ওনার অভিজ্ঞতার মধ্যে দিয়ে পথ চলার মধ্যে দিয়ে যে শিক্ষা উনি আমাদের দিলেন, এবং ওনার দীর্ঘ গবেষণার মধ্যে দিয়ে যে শিক্ষা উনি আমাদের দিলেন, তা আমাদেরকে সমৃদ্ধ করবে। কারণ আমাদের এই উপমহাদেশে যে জাতপাত ব্যবস্থা, যেটা আসলে অসাম্যের ওপর দাঁড়িয়ে তৈরি হয়েছে, শ্রম বিভাজনের ওপর দাঁড়িয়ে তৈরি হয়েছে, তার একটি অর্থনৈতিক ভিত্তি রয়েছে, এবং প্রতিটা উত্তরের মধ্যে দিয়ে তিনি আমাদেরকে সেই বিষয়টাকেই চিনিয়ে দিলেন, যা আমাদের অ্যাক্টিভিস্টদের এবং ছাত্রছাত্রীদের অত্যন্ত সাহায্য করবে পরবর্তীকালে এই ব্রাহ্মণ্যবাদ বিরোধী আন্দোলন বা জাতপাতের বিনাশের লক্ষ্যে যে কোনো আন্দোলনকে এগিয়ে নিয়ে যাওয়ার ক্ষেত্রে। ধন্যবাদ।